You are listening to the Young Black Travelers podcast. Black voices talking on experiential travel, dedicated to creating a global community of travelers. So, be bold, be inspired, be spontaneous. We are YBT.
So welcome to another episode of the Young Black Travelers podcast. My name is Asshur Cunningham. You guys know me. Today we are talking Rio, Sao Paulo, and Carnival. But like we do on all of our episodes, we invite someone, a guest, to share their experiences with you. And today, I have a very special guest. All of our guests are special, by the way. But, today it's extra special. The guest is extra special. I have today with me my sister. So I'm going to let her introduce herself to you.
Hey, y'all. It's Zonelle. I'm so happy to be here.
Woo! Listen, well, welcome, Zonelle. So let's give her an applause for being here on the podcast for the first time. And hopefully she comes back. Welcome, Zonelle. That's the YBT audience. Yeah, Zonelle, welcome. And so, typically on our podcast, we usually ask our guests an opening question. And our opening question to you, because I know you recently went to Jamaica. You did a recent trip. So tell us about your recent trip to Jamaica.
Yeah, so I recently went to Jamaica on a girls' trip. It was actually for my friend's birthday. So shout out to Melissa.
Shout out, Melissa.
Yes, girl. It was an amazing time.
So where did you stay when you went into Jamaica? Yeah.
So I basically stayed at an Airbnb in Westmoreland. And so I usually stay on resorts, but Airbnb was different this time. So yeah.
Oh, wow. So that's interesting. So you typically stay at Airbnb, at resorts or hotels when you go to Jamaica and usually travel. So just tell the listeners, let's do a comparison because now you've stayed at both. Compare the hotel experience or the resort experience to the Airbnb experience.
Well, the Airbnb experience was different than the hotel experience. One, because everything is provided for you at the hotel. Like you have bars, you have restaurants on the resort. You have activities on the resort where you can just enjoy every day. But at the Airbnb, we just basically had to buy our own food. We had to go grocery shopping. We had to cook our own food.
Wow.
We had an enjoyable time, honestly, just doing that. And we just made ourselves we just had a lot of fun. We basically had a lot of fun because, it was just us, right? There was nobody around. We could do whatever we want. And it was just it was an experience that was super different from the resort. So, yeah.
Got you. So if you were going to do it again, would you do the Airbnb again?
I definitely would do the Airbnb again. But I love the resorts too. The reason why I will do the Airbnb again is because only if I'm doing a big group, that's the reason why I would do an Airbnb. And also we had a personal driver. So it was a different experience as well because anytime you wanted to go somewhere, you just hit up the driver and be like, oh, hey, we'll be ready for this time. Oh, and also the driver, we was going to the clubs a lot. And so we would get picked up at 3 a.m. in the morning. So on a resort, it's okay, you enjoy the, festivities that's happening there. But honestly, you can go out wherever you want with a personal driver. And so the personal driver on the Airbnb just made it much better experience.
Wow, makes sense. Wow. So and I know we've talked about that a lot on this podcast. We've typically been comparing the resort, hotel versus Airbnb, and different people has had different takes on it. But I think you've hit something that is pretty important when you said if you are going with a large group, and I think that's the tune we've heard consistently on the podcast. If you are going with a large group, Airbnbs make more sense because everybody is together in the same apartment or building, whatever it is, versus hotels. You're probably going to be like, hey, person number one, we are ready. You wait for them downstairs.
Right.
You know, it's
It
very
can
different.
sometimes be annoying because you're not seeing everybody at the same time. So you can't tell everybody to get ready at the same time or whatever. It's just that everybody has to specifically meet on a time where you said that everybody can meet downstairs in a resort. But right now, like in an Airbnb, it's like, okay, everybody meet up in the kitchen. Like, all right, we eat breakfast and we out.
Yeah, and even though everybody is late, because that's what I've found typically at Airbnb's experience. When everybody's late, nobody's like really up in arms. Like, oh, John is late or Lucy's late. You're like, okay, well, we're all in because I know late. I saw everybody. We're all here together.
Honestly, there was some time. There was some times where Janelle was sleeping and we almost left Janelle.
Listen, we're going to save that for another podcast number 2 on this experience. Yes. So, Janelle, we are calling you to the podcast because you got to defend yourself, Janelle. So, yes. Well, listen, Zonelle, that was our intro. That was our opening. But we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to get into the main conversation where Zonelle and I are going to talk about our trip to Brazil. So stay tuned as we continue this conversation. So welcome back to our conversation. So Zonelle and my conversation, again, as I said, I'm here with my sister, the second to last one. So she's after me. And we basically went to Brazil together in 2023. So this podcast has been a long time overdue, but you know, we had to bring the information to you because it's pretty important. I mean, a lot happened, a lot of good things happened on this trip. So we wanted to share it with you. So we went to Brazil for Carnival, winter break of 2023. But you know what, Zonelle? We were lucky. We were lucky because we flew Delta One to Brazil. And so, by the way, this was Zonelle's first real long haul flight. Well, this was Zonelle's first long haul flight.
Right.
Because the flights you've typically done have been between maybe less than 5 hours, because St. Vincent, Trinidad is about 5 hours.
Right.
So that's probably the longest. So this was your first long haul flight, and the flight time from New York, because we're based in New York, the flight time from New York to Brazil is 10 hours, right?
Yeah.
10 hours. So homegirl, on her first long haul flight, got it kind of easy.
I did. My first spontaneous trip.
Spontaneous trip. So there was a lot of firsts on this trip. First class, first Delta One. But as you guys know, a lot of times I travel on buddy passes, and I keep impressing on you, if you have friends who work for the airlines, you should probably, ask them and use a buddy pass. I know some people don't like them because they're afraid. Listen, they can go very wrong. That can happen, but sometimes they can go very right. Like in our case, it went very well for us. So we got to fly Delta One. So basically, if you don't know what Delta One is Delta's first class. It is technically business class if you're comparing it to other major international airlines like Emirates. But on American-based airlines, so the 3 major airlines in the US are United, American, and Delta. But if we're comparing it amongst those, then this is a first class cabin. So we have lie flat seats, and these tickets can run you, thousands of dollars, probably upwards of $10,000, $20,000 for a Delta One seat. And so we were lucky to fly Delta One. So Zonelle, how was that?
Honestly, it was an experience. And then also, I didn't even know that it cost that much to fly like first class or Delta One, whatever. But yeah, I won't be paying that. But it was like really good experience. The big screen TV in front of you, the comfy recliners.
Fly flat bed.
Right. Let's get to that soon.
Get to that.
The food was amazing. The experience overall was amazing, but one thing I did forget to do was I forgot to sleep flat. Like, Honestly, like I saw the directions or whatever, but me typically like on a flight, like you sleep
You sit up
upright
when you're
and
sitting at the back of the plane.
right. But this time, like I had put it in like a recliner, not even like sitting upright, but in a recliner, and I didn't know that it can go into a flat whole bed, and I was just so tight because I'm just like, oh my god, like I didn't even get to do that, have that experience of like sleeping flat on, in first class. And I'm just like, everybody over here having a really good sleep. I
Knocked
had a
out.
good sleep too. I ain't gonna lie. But everybody was just sleeping flat. And I'm just like, God damn, like I should have just like looked over and checked. Like, because I really did see my brother. Like, I just saw like, like the comforter or whatever. And yeah, they had a comforter too. But I just saw him and I'm just like, okay, he's sleeping regular or whatever. But I just didn't know that the bed was flat. Like, but one day.
Another day, another day. And let me tell you guys, wow, the Delta One experience. If you, well, there's this whole, I think, TikTok, Instagram trending video of Steve Harvey basically saying, basically, you have to one time in your life fly either business class or first class. Because I tell you, once you go left, because usually first class or business class is left, once you start flying and you're flying economy, you're like, oh crap, I wish I was over there. If you've never done it before, trust me, you will always be like, okay, it's whatever. Listen, this was a 10-hour flight. I think I remember getting on that flight and it was really like I had a long day before that. And so stepping on the plane to a glass of champagne, to a welcome snack, they
Glasses
usually
of wine,
glasses
back to
of
back.
wine back to back, and also whatever mixed drink you want. So I remember having a cosmopolitan and just different drinks. But it was a late flight, so you weren't gonna OD because more than likely you're gonna be knocked out after a while. But I remember that, and then they started the dinner service.
Right.
And they had already brought some snacks before, and now the dinner
The
service
snacks was good too.
really good. They started the dinner service with a snack, and then it had an appetizer actually. So 3-course meal, by
It
the
had
way.
everything, okay? I don't even know what to name. It had snack, breakfast, lunch, dinner, everything in between, dessert, like
Yeah.
everything honestly was good.
Yeah. 3-course meal, appetizer, main dish that was really large. That comes also with soup, with silverware.
Oh yeah, that
And
soup
then-
was good. I ain't
The
gonna
soup was
lie.
really good. Oh my God. And then
I can't.
the soup was delicious. And then I guess the dessert, I think I had ice cream at the end.
I
And
think it was Häagen-Dazs. It was all right.
It was
It's regular. But still, you
It
had
was
ice
good.
cream. You'll get that in economy.
Oh, you don't get that at the back of the plane. And listen, after that, I was knocked out. I was gone probably until morning when Zonelle tapped me. And I'm like, oh, we're landing. I think breakfast was actually about to begin when you tapped me.
Yeah, I guess. I think. Or I think I tapped him because I'm like, are you asleep yet? Like, cause I really don't know. Like, but he falls asleep mad quick. So I'm just like, it's probably morning, it's probably night. I don't know.
Yeah. So listen, so basically on this trip, when you're flying into Brazil, you can fly into many cities. I mean, Brazil is a huge country. Just like the United States, it's actually as large as the United States. And so you could obviously choose to fly into Sao Paulo or Rio, Salvador, Bahia, which is where I really wanted to go. But our goal was to get to Rio. But, I recognize that the flights to Rio were they were booked. We weren't going to get first class. I knew our options for Sao Paulo give us the greater chance of getting first class, and it worked. So we flew into Sao Paulo. I guess Sao Paulo is a major metropolitan city. So Zonelle, what was your first impressions of Sao Paulo? How did you like it? Yeah.
It was like more city, like how I can describe it. I feel like I can describe it. I don't know. Like it was just like probably like vibrant. I can say like just like the vibes, like the people like around, like everybody's outside, everybody's doing their own thing. When it's nighttime, it's like a party, like it's just like, city vibes,
Yeah,
really.
it is. I mean, and I think sometimes when people come from large cities, particularly northern cities like New York, London, I mean, we do know like New York, London, Toronto, these are major cities, especially for West Indians. When we think of booming metropolis or big cities, we typically think about New York and London. But then in the South, you have Sao Paulo, which is probably even larger than New York, to be quite frank. That place is huge, big, booming city, subway systems, bus system, all of that. It is huge and it has a life of its own, skyscrapers everywhere. Sao Paulo is something else. I don't think I expected what I saw. And sometimes I think a lot of times I don't expect much. And that's unfair to say of a lot of these places. And then when I go, I'm like, wow, this really blows my mind.
Well, I didn't know what to expect. So
so it superseded your expectation. So we were in Sao Paulo. We weren't in Sao Paulo for long, but when we were in Sao Paulo, the first thing we did. So let me first say thank you, Walt. Thank you. Applause to Walt. Applause to Walt. Thank you. Well, we want to say thank you because Walt actually was instrumental in hooking us up with his friend Tia's and her boyfriend. Well, more so his friend. And so when we landed, we linked with them. And she was like, "Oh, let's go out tonight." And so she took us out the first night we landed to.
It was lit.
It was lit. A carnival in Brazil happens throughout the country during this time, so it's not just Rio. And I learned that when I went there, because usually when we think of carnival, we are thinking about, when we see the videos, we are seeing the Rio Carnival, but it happens everywhere. And so, and also part of carnival is there's a lot of parties in the street, a lot of debauchery,
which was
all
amazing to see. It reminded me like of back home where, you just like can party outside. You're not sheltered and everything. Like it was just a vibe.
It was a vibe. And so we went out that night and we were just having street food, popcorn, just so many different things and vibing to the music. The music was different, but it was still vibey. We enjoyed ourselves.
Chatting it up with people you don't know, hugging people you don't know.
That was a whole vibe. And I would also say that in Sao Paulo, and I would highly suggest that you try to experience the Brazilian carnival, either Sao Paulo, Rio, Salvador de Bahia, because they're all different. They all have all different flavors, and we'll get into a little bit about it. But in Sao Paulo, the carnival is huge as well. We didn't go to the Sao Paulo carnival, like the actual carnival parade. We went to that in Rio, but the Rio carnival is the largest one. But we went to the festivities and the celebration there, and that was something in itself. But before we get to our time in Rio, let's talk a little bit, Zonelle, about our experience flying intra-Brazil. Like, we took a commercial flight from Sao Paulo to Rio. So remember, the reason why we ultimately did fly into Sao Paulo was because we wanted to get to Rio ultimately, which wasn't a bad idea because ultimately we got to see Sao Paulo and we love Sao Paulo, but we had to take a commercial flight or the bus to the bus to Rio, and the bus takes, I think, about 12 hours, but the flight was about an hour flight. How did you like that?
Well, it was short. The flights, they were usual small flights. The timing, I didn't mind it. I know it was just like a city over, so it wouldn't be like, too long on a smaller flight, but I felt like it was fine. Hey, we all came from, well, I don't know, but I came from small flights, so I know.
No, well, this flight, compared to the 767 that we flew down on Delta, I think our first flight was on Latam, big, actually owned by Brazil and big in South America. And I think that was a 737. But one of the things that I do want to point out about and it's typical outside of the US. You are served, the service is usually good, but I mean, you weren't served a whole meal. I think they serve you a drink on this hour flight and maybe a little snack.
Yeah, I think it was a drink and a snack.
Yeah, so it wasn't different from what you would get on an American flight or Canadian flight. So it would be interesting to see if I was flying longer distance, if they would actually serve you food. But listen, so we now get to Rio. We also, so what's your first impressions of Rio?
Okay, I think Rio was so different from Sao Paulo because it was like this. Sao Paulo was a city vibe, right? But I think in Rio, it's more like, I want to say like, it kind of looked like more of a Caribbean type vibe. Like, and basically like it was just like a lot of greenery too.
Yes.
Whereas in Sao Paulo, it was just like buildings, right? So you got to see like, the mountains and stuff like that over in Rio.
You're right. That you guys have seen the cartoon. I think there's a cartoon called Rio, and
No,
all
that's
of the
a movie.
it's a movie, but it's a movie, a cartoon movie, right? I've always said Disney does an amazing job when Disney depicts in its cartoons and movies what these places it is really showing look like. Because as I said, I think when we talked about my trip to Kenya and my safari experience, I said, like, when I was on the safari, I literally, all I could think about was Lion King.
Lion King. Wow.
And it looked like that, right? And it's weird. But here too, when I think of Rio, I kid you not, the cartoon, the movie is a really nice depiction of what Rio looks like. It's like this mix of city and buildings, metropolis. It's a really nice mix that Rio has. You're seeing mountains behind you with greenery, and then you're in the city, the beaches there, like.
Yeah. You're seeing statues, like all about. So.
Wow, it's something else. I mean, you're obviously, I think you're at the border of different rainforests, but we actually stayed in Rio, but Rio has different districts. So we stayed in Barra da Tijuca. How did you like Barra da Tijuca?
It was cool. There was a beach nearby. There's beaches nearby. So I like that. I like to be near a beach. I like to go to the beach. It was just I don't know. It was good.
Yeah, it was. So I would say that Barra da Tijuca, so I mean, depends on the purpose you're going. My only downside was, particularly if you want to be engaged in a lot of the nightlife.
Oh, it was a little bit far.
It was far from like the Rio proper, like where everyone is talking about. Like typically when you hear about Rio, people are going to tell you about Copacabana, Ipanema, all of those places. But Barra da Tijuca is actually a next, and actually probably better than those places, because what I read and saw was that the accommodations in Baja will be way better than in Pineda and Copacabana. And also when we did go to Copacabana is it's a little bit old. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's historic, right? I mean, when there's songs about Copacabana. Copacabana has that old flair. And so people did talk about like the accommodations in Copacabana would be a little bit older versus Barra da Tijuca, where they are going to be a bit more modern. And it was, because where we stayed was really modern, really nice. It is just a little bit further from like the nightlife a lot of the nightlife that everybody and tourists will be going to is going to be around Copacabana, Ipanema, particularly those two areas. All American tourists are going to be in those places. But I think one of the things to note about Barra da Tijuca is it is a really nice vibe away from the madness.
Right. It's like more developed.
It's more developed. The beach is going to be less crowded, because I'm telling you, the beaches over at Copacabana and Ipanema, they're packed. Mm-hmm. So you better go early, get yourself your beach chair or whatever, because those beaches are going to be packed from early. Over at Barra da Tijuca, we went to the beach was probably like 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
1 o'clock and we were good. We literally got a
It
beach.
wasn't packed at all.
It wasn't packed at all. And so that's one of the things that people talk about, the difference between the different areas. So if you care about, I would say, just being where the people are, where the tourists are, then you certainly want to go to Copacabana, Ipanema, that area in Rio. However, if you want maybe your own space, your own privacy, you just want the quiet life, a more developed, because apparently over in Barra da Tijuca, that was the village they built, I think, when the Olympic was there. And apparently that's where some of the wealthy Brazilians live over on that side. Of course, they're going to live away from all the madness of like Rio proper. Because remember when we were coming back from the parade, you just saw there was just a lot of people outside. It was just chaos. To get a taxi outside also looked a little bit dodgy sometimes because they're dodgy neighborhoods.
Real sketchy.
So be careful. Real sketchy neighborhoods, some places in Rio. But in Baja, I mean, you could walk anywhere. They're really nice. You remember that spot we went to on the beach?
Oh, the
restaurant.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And there's a lot of them on like the boardwalk facing the beach. There's a lot of restaurants there and you could sit there and eat. And we met this.
And there's like bars like on the actual beach itself too. So.
Yeah. Because the difference here between what we saw in Copacabana is the places that are on the beach in Copacabana are like actual restaurants in building, hotspots in buildings, you know, like, so you may find a club in a building on the beach, like, but here in Baja, they're like bars close on the boardwalk, like literally right next to the beach. So they're very different vibes. So I guess choose your beach wisely. Choose your beach based on what you want to experience. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't mind either.
You don't mind either.
Like, I don't mind, like, you know, bar on the beach, like itself, or like, you know, the restaurants above.
Got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're both still closed.
And yeah, because they're both like, again, the Rio area is a very beachy place. Right. Beachy mountain place. Interesting. But let's talk now about Carnival, or actually the parade. It's called we saw the parade at the Samba Dome. Hopefully I said that right. The Samba Dome, or Dome, however you say it. Now, Zonelle, tell the listeners your impressions from this festivity.
Well, honestly, I didn't know what to really expect from the Rio Carnival because I really haven't seen the Rio Carnival on TV or, you know, like on TikTok or anything, but I saw it after the fact. But it was beautiful. It was so beautiful, like to enter, to get to your like sections or like wherever you want to go. It was pretty easy, right? There wasn't like a long wait or a long line or whatever. And it was just like different entrances to get in. And then once you get in, you just walk to whatever spot you want to sit at. Oh, no, actually, no. It's on your ticket.
Well, I don't think they give you a seat. No, you don't have a seat, but you have to get to your section.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I wanted to say. Like, you have to be when you're buying your tickets to see the carnival. By the way, the carnival happened, keep saying the carnival because remember, this is carnival time. Carnival to them is the different parties on the street. So this could be over a week or two period, right? But the Samba Dome Parade, the show, the greatest show on earth, which is what they name it. And I certainly think it is the greatest show on earth. When you buy your tickets, you have to pay attention to the section that you are buying. By the end of this podcast, we're going to bring up the section we actually bought because I actually think it was a really good section. It was a section that made sense.
I think so.
Because by the way, the Samba Dome is basically, think of a highway.
It's a rectangle. A long rectangle.
Long rectangle. There's a big street in the middle and it's long, right? So that's where the parade is coming down, which I think this is genius how they designed this space because I've never seen a stadium like such. But they designed this stadium basically, think about a street, whatever street or highway that is close to you. Think about
I could give a good like. Okay, so think about if you're from Brooklyn, think about Eastern Parkway and the length from one straight point to the next straight point. There's no curves, there's nothing. It's just one end to the next, and it's really long. I might be dragging it, but it's long as for a parade to even go down on. So yeah.
And think about stands and risers being built here, which is kind of like typically at the sides of highways there are like buildings, apartment buildings, but here they added risers, and I just think this was genius. And so you have to ensure that you purchase your ticket to be in the right section, because I would actually think being at the start of the parade is not the best place to be.
I don't think so.
You don't want to be at the start. You kind of want to be at the end, which was kind of where we were because, and I read it when I was buying the tickets, but it didn't make sense to me until like I saw it. Because at the end of each presentation, drummers follow the parade. And like it's this lively music that comes at the end. But the people who are at the beginning typically don't get this because the drummers come out at the end point and play whatever song band or whatever they're calling plays.
Right. I'm down for a good drum line. So yeah. it was given.
It was given. I mean, so there were we got there, the parade or the show started, I think about 9.
Yeah, it did.
It started about 9. And I don't think we expected that we were going to be there until about 4 a.m.
I did not know that it lasts that long. I was a little bit tired, but it was so fun. Like you just wanted to see the next one. You just wanted to keep recording.
Yes.
Like it was that type of experience. Like you will want to stay up for this.
You will. You definitely will. I have vlogs on this, so I'm gonna put those out. You could see this when you go to youngblacktravelers.com. You will see the vlogs in the blog post on this podcast. But literally every hour, there is a different band.
Right.
That's how it works. And what was so interesting was that each band have their own song. So for this hour and theme. And so for this hour, all you're hearing is this song.
This song or replay. It was so good though. Like that first song, I was like, okay, this is like really like, mind you, I was over there like dancing with it too. Like I was trying to do a little samba, it was really good.
Oh my God, it was nice. And then again, but let's talk about the floats though.
Amazing. First of all, I didn't even know that they can build floats like that.
That large.
Right, that large and that sturdy.
Right.
Yo, the float, the Greek float, that joint was turning like, and they would just hold it off of there like slipping, falling. But it was like a drunken kind of scene, like of the Greek.
Yeah, I think they were the Greek or Rome, but they were depicting the debauchery that was happening in Rome. It was, I tell you, that float was a sex show. It was like you had men on men, you had woman on woman. Like it was just crazy over there, right?
You start to see your storybook come to life, like your school what you learned in the school book.
Yeah, it was like, and I remember that float had. I mean, Jesus, these people look like gods. By the way, I mean, they're in shape. They're in shape. I mean, but we know Brazil. This is something. They're in shape. And they're just doing their thing. And I think that float had like, I guess wine was the water that was coming down.
That's another thing. Like, I never saw that before. Like, it had so many moving pieces. Like, how do you have like wine or just like water, like just flowing on a float like that? Like, where is it going? Or like, like how can it stand the electricity? Like, all these different factors. Like, it was just like so big, like moving all this. Like, it was good.
Listen, so I know our Trinidadians who are listening to this, and I think when Young Black Travelers posted our trip from Brazil, and we said the greatest show on earth, I certainly heard people commenting, Trinidad has the greatest carnival. Listen, Trinidad may have the greatest party at Carnival, our part in the Caribbean.
But honestly, y'all do not got that. Y'all do not have that show. Y'all do not have that, the floats. Like, I don't know if y'all could do it, but let's try. Let's see y'all try.
Yeah, because those, maybe Trinidadians, Vincentians, Jamaicans, whoever make costumes for Carnival need to fly down to Brazil because y'all are going to see. This is just out of this world.
And honestly, the costumes, let's talk about the costume. Like, I definitely tried on a costume, and that thing, I mean, I know, like, costumes can be heavy and stuff like that. But let me tell you, sturdy.
Well made.
Like, nothing fell off. Like, the headpiece, that's a headpiece, right? It stays on your head. It's, like, really, like, secured. Like, what you call it? It was wings?
I think, you had wings.
Yeah, that was also, like, well made, too. So, I think, like, their, like, costumes and everything, it's, like, it's not rushed. It don't give rushed.
Because apparently what I learned is that they, like, from when the parade stops or when the show stops, it starts from the next day. They start making costumes, things start being produced. Okay. So there's a whole year process.
Right.
And it shows. It's
you got
clear.
the whole year to make this perfect.
It is something else. So you guys need to put this on your list. I'm telling you, there were floats making sounds. You remember that one, that big bird that was making an annoying sound? It was annoying.
The squawking happy.
It sounded like if the end of the world. That's how I felt.
Okay.
And this big bird coming down. That's how it felt. Like, I'm like, oh God, is God coming back for this world? Because the way this thing, and I tell you, it was a bird, and it was just
a big bird,
just a big bird. That's all it was, and it was making a sound like worse than that, by the way. And it was just coming down, and they played this sound until the end.
Right.
It was amazing, but yet still ridiculous. And I think honestly, my favorite, God, there were just so many moments, and all of these were different. I call them bands, but different groups.
It's different. It's called like different
schools. So each school have their song. Each school has their theme. Each school have their flag. There are supporters of schools because when the last one performed, or one of them performed, it seemed like everybody was with that school. They give everyone flags. It was out of this world.
Yeah,
it was out of this world. But I think my favorite. Everything was great. I mean, that Greek or Roman float was amazing, but maybe what really touched the heart more for me was the school that really presented, it seems like, on the African history and struggle in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
There was this, and as you guys know, like, Brazil was the first stop on this whole transatlantic slave thingy. Salvador de Bahia, big slave port, and they still have a lot of the culture from the countries they came from. In Salvador, they keep it pure, very black place. I need to go there. But they showed, like, you see the black mamas, and it was just like real black power on this float.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and they also seem like they showed black, because we were interpreting this because it was all in Portuguese, right? But it seemed like there were different representation of prominent black figures in Brazil on this float, and they had pictures of them, like there were pictures on the float. It was just out of this world. And then I think it was that school that had the drones in the air. There were drones in the air, that were writing out names, and I think showing pictures of
the
people.
Schools too. Yeah.
So listen, certainly put on your list. If it was never on your list, I think this is a bucket list item, and we will get the section that we were in the next segment for you. But you definitely need to go to Brazil for Carnival?
And honestly, I cannot get Brazil out of my phone because it's so many like videos. There's so many like memories from the Carnival that I just do not want to get rid of, because you know when your phone storage it gets low and you try to delete like all the stuff.
You just can't delete that one.
I don't think it was so much videos. I had to literally go through like, you know, to pick my best one, like my favorite one. And I think that my favorite float, honestly, was like the slavery one and the Greek one. So yeah, like you really do need to visit this Brazil Carnival. Or this Rio Carnival, I'm going to say.
Yeah, and remember, you can see the Carnival in, I think, many places in Brazil. You could see it in Sao Paulo. You can see it in Salvador de Bahia. You can see it in Rio. I think those are the three most popular places to see that show. In Salvador de Bahia, what I've learned is you're going to get a more party black culture, maybe even closer to the Caribbean type carnival. But in Rio, the Rio Carnival is the greatest show. Like, if you want to see that, you want to see it at the Samba Dome, because that is spectacular. So add that to your list. But so now we have two more points that we need to touch before we take break. We also we hiked to Cristo de Redentor, the statue that everyone knows, right? I think I said that right.
I don't know how to say it really. I know it was Christ the Redeemer.
Christ the Redeemer. That's how we say it in English, right?
Oh, but this is in Spanish. Okay.
Portuguese.
Oh,
they speak Portuguese, by the way. So make sure, thank you for dropping that, because I'll tell you guys, Portuguese seems to be, I didn't see it as a mix.
I understood some, I caught some like.
But maybe you speak because you speak Spanish.
Right.
So, what I will say to you guys is that, you know, sometimes you go to a Spanish country and some people may speak English or they may want to practice their English with you. Let me say this. Seems like the Portuguese people are very proud of their Portuguese language, as they should be. So just know that when you go to Brazil or even Portugal, but more so Brazil, you better try to speak to them or order whatever you're trying to order in Portuguese, because you're not going to be able to tell them that you want a coffee, simple coffee. And that may sound ignorant, but to you, because it may work in many countries, even foreign language speaking countries, but in Portuguese, it's not going to, in Brazil, it's not going to work. So try to either download Google Translate, Apple Translate, whatever you got to do to get some Portuguese there so you can communicate.
Google Translate was our friend.
It was our friend. You need that. But Zonelle, we went to Christ the Redeemer and we decided to hike. Lord God.
So this hike, let's talk about this hike.
Let's talk about the hike. Tell
First
them.
of all, why did you want to do a hike? Like, why would we want to hike on vacation? Like
in Brazil.
Like
in the forest.
Right. When you think of Brazil, you think of the rainforest. So like, why are we going up in the bushes?
In the bushes. You know, Brazil has anacondas and big snakes. And
right.
Lord, thank God we didn't see any. But
I'm a little like, you know, outgoing. So I agree. You know, I didn't mind.
But
I was just going to be aware of what I'm getting myself into. Underweight. It was just like a lot of like, literally, I never climbed like that in my life before. I never climbed, like literally you're climbing too with your hands at some point.
Yeah,
like
rock climbing.
Right, you have to pull yourself up, and it was just like steep, right?
Yeah, it was steep.
It was steep. But honestly, like I don't have asthma or anything. I'm good with like, you know, walking and, you know, running and stuff like that. But if you do have asthma, like some people, make sure you take your pump. Okay? Please. Please.
Oh, I was having some attacks on that hike. It was a lot, right? And I think that's why we do this podcast.
I think the one point where you had your attack or like your little, you know, moment was the part where we had got to like the steepest point. And I was just like, oh shoot, we can't go no more.
I was like, give me a moment.
Right.
I need a moment. And you know, it's the tour guide, he does this all the time, so he could keep going. I mean, obviously, if you go up that mountain, that hill, this mountain every day, it's going to be no bother to you, right? And if you hike often, it may be no issue for you. But you guys, that's an option. It's an option. There are different ways to get up to Christ the Redeemer.
There's like a train.
There's a train or tram, which we took at the end, because I think at the end
who's hiking down? Not me.
we all were kind of like, nope.
Mm-mm.
Actually, when Linus and them said that they had to catch their boat tour because we were going to hike back down. I was like, I'm not
ready
doing
though.
it.
I was ready.
I was not ready.
Because going down is better than coming up, and I feel like you will get down there faster.
I was over it.
You might break a knee, but
I was over that hike. It's a beautiful experience if you like nature.
And I'm a nature girl, so besides like, the wild animals that's out there, I am a nature girl. So that's really why I agreed to go hiking, because I don't mind bugs. I don't mind a little fright, right?
Yeah.
But if it's too much, then I'm never doing that again.
And I don't even know why I agreed to this, because listen, I've seen videos in Brazil. Brazil has big boas and they're everywhere. And the tour guide did say that there are snakes. Obviously, they're obviously snakes. So, and I saw this video. I think you had shown me the video of this snake that's at this tourist site, this big snake.
Mm-hmm.
After I saw that, I'm like, man, I wonder, what if we had seen one of those?
Hello, we never speak that into existence, okay? Never.
Yes. But
I was definitely looking for snakes, honestly, because I ain't want to be surprised or whatever. Like, I was just gonna probably skip and then not tell you, because I know how you are. You might be a little worse than me, but
I was not looking. I was focused on getting up.
I was making sure that nothing was in my path. Remember there was monkeys too.
There were monkeys. Yes, we saw monkeys, some little monkeys.
Yeah. So even that, I kind of wasn't afraid of monkeys, right? But don't touch me. Like that.
Don't touch me type of thing, right? Listen, but I think the hike took about 2-3 hours to get up there, or even probably more.
Honestly, I wasn't even counting. I felt like me and the other girl, Charlotte, we was just basically asking how much longer? We kept asking how much longer, because it was getting so long. You just walking and climbing and talking. But when are we gonna get there? Where is it? Are we there yet? Are we close? The guy was just he just kept saying, yeah, we're close. Never ask somebody how close we are.
Yeah, especially people who does this all the time. Don't do it. But at the top, was it worth it?
I think it was worth it, right? You got to see this big statue. You got to experience the feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
The feeling of being under this statue. Not idolizing statues. I'm not idolizing a statue, but it's just a sense of protection, or a sense of I don't know, just God is watching over you sometimes.
Yeah, because it's a statue of God, and this is a big landmark in Brazil. When people see Brazil, when they think of Brazil, they think about this statue. So it was actually really good to see the statue. So stay tuned as we continue this conversation. So welcome back to the Young Black Travelers podcast. Listen, so we had a full, amazing conversation. Again, Zonelle is here with us, and we are wrapping this episode up. But like we do on all of our episodes on the Young Black Travelers podcast, we take time out to shout out someone special to the podcast, someone who listens to the podcast, who looks at our page, our Instagram page, who looks at our blog, youngblacktravelers.com, or someone who we probably had an amazing time with on our trip. And I think we're going to take time out to shout out who, Zonelle?
I want to give a shout out to Raphael. He was the best tour guide going up on that mountain.
Shout out to Raphael.
Yes.
Yes. Listen, we're shouting out Raphael because By the way, Rafael is the founder of Aventurismo. So we are shouting out Rafael and Aventurismo. So you could go on Instagram and follow them at AVENTURISMO. It's a tour agency. And it is Rafael who we took the opportunity to climb to Christ the Redeemer with. He was the tour guide. He brought us there safely and he brought us safely back. So shout out to you, Rafael. Shout out to you. All right. So listen, we do on this episode and all of our episodes, we take time to play a game. And the game is this or that. So Zonelle, this is for you. So this or that. There is no in between. It's either this or that. So tell the listeners, do you prefer Brazil or Jamaica?
And do I say why?
You could say why.
Oh, okay. Jamaica.
Oh, wow. Okay, Jamaica, why?
Jamaica is my type of vibe, honestly. It's the Caribbean life. It's so much fun to party and just do things that you would usually do.
Okay, so Jamaica.
And also, it's not hard, like the language. It's English.
It's English.
So I'm vibing with Jamaica here.
Got you. And so Jamaica or St. Thomas? Because I think you went to St. Thomas.
I did. Jamaica once more. St. Thomas was a vibe, but it's like very, like, it's quiet. Like, it's really quiet. It's just like a beauty, but it's quiet. It's not too much. It's just, yeah.
Wow.
It's just paradise.
So if you just want a laid back vacation, chill vibe, then St. Thomas.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think we answered this one already, but for the fun of this or that, passion fruit, caipirinha, or lime?
I'll take passion fruit. Lime.
Yeah. By the way, lime is the caipirinha that is common in the US. Right. So that was my introduction to caipirinhas. But the passion fruit was the drink that I think is very common in Brazil. And you could get it in many different variations. There was this one that we tried with Tias that I didn't particularly like, but passion fruit any day for me. But Zonelle, this is the last question before we end this episode of the podcast. And we've had a great conversation so far. And thank you again for joining. But before we go, why should people consider staying in Barra da Tijuca?
I think you should consider staying there because it's like a calmness to it. There's not much people on the streets, but it's just a real chilled vibe. And if you're into chill vibes, then that will be the place for you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, Zonelle, again, thank you for coming and speaking to our listeners on today's episode.
Thank you for having
First podcast episode. Yes. And listen, so Zonelle, thank you. And if they want to reach out to you and listen to you, I know you do hair, by the way, and makeup, I think. Where can our listeners reach you?
Just check out my Instagram page at Zoglamz, ZOGLAMZ.
All right, so check out Zoglamz if you want to connect with her. And again, Zonelle, thank you. But I want to remind you, our listeners, to continue to support the Young Black Travelers podcast. And you could simply do that by subscribing either on Apple or on Spotify, Amazon, wherever you listen to podcasts. And share this episode, share all of our episodes with your friends, with your family. Say, yo, these young people, these middle-aged, these old people, whatever you want to classify us as, are doing great things. I love these conversations. I get great tips from these conversations. So yeah, share our podcast and also stay connected with us on all of our social media platforms, on Instagram at Young Black Travelers Blog, on Threads at Young Black Travelers Blog, on TikTok at Young Black Travelers, at Facebook at Young Black Travelers, or you can simply go to our website at Young Black Travelers Blog. Sorry, I got that wrong. youngblacktravelers.com. Thank you again. Continue to stay safe. So wash your hands, keep great sanitary health practices so we can keep our world open. And again, thank you for listening to today's episode of the Young Black Travelers podcast. And until the next episode, take care.